it is the halfway point in the endpoints. Or another way to describe it, it's in the middle of two endpoints. Okay. It splits the segment up into two equal segments. Okay, all of those are correct. So like we did with distance, we can find the distance between certain line segments, okay, just by using a coordinate grid. Like if I said, I've given you 3 line segments on a coordinate grid. What's the difference between a line and a line segment, by the way? What's the difference between a line and a line segment? Nothing? Again, nothing? Yes. Lines never end. They go on forever. But line segments have endpoints. Okay? So you could not find the midpoint of a line. Because if it goes on forever, how can you find where it is in the middle? It's impossible. You can only find the midpoints of line segments. So where would I find the midpoint of AB on this grid? What would be the coordinates of the midpoint? Rowan? 3, -2. It would be right here. I think we can all agree. And that is the point 3, -2. And how did we find it? Just kind of find it by looking at it and eyeballing it. What would the midpoint be from C to D? It is? Yeah, Rome? Yeah, right here. And that's the point -3, 0. Diagonal line segments are a little bit trickier. This one's actually not too bad. Okay, but not all of them are going to be nice and clean like this. So here, the midpoint would be right there. And that would be the point 3, 3. But again, we don't want to have to use a coordinate grid all the time. Okay, that takes a lot of time. So if I gave you, like I said, okay, a segment begins at -7, 4, and it ends at 10, -2, find me the midpoint. Well, you have to go through the whole process of graphing it, trying to find the midpoint, and then getting the points, or getting the midpoint from that, the coordinates. Okay? We can develop a formula. And one of the words that I used when we were talking about midpoint at the beginning was the halfway point. Okay? How would you find a halfway number between 10 and 2? Would you count, or is there another way? What's the number halfway between 10 and 2? Out of my system. What's the number between halfway between 2? How'd you get 6? Almost. Not minus. Right. add the two numbers together and divide by 2. What's the difference between 2 and, or what's 2 and 10? 2 plus 10 divided 2, 6. What's the halfway point between 10 and 20? 10 plus 20 divide 2, 15. So we use that same reasoning for the midpoint formula. Oops. Lost my little. So to get the midpoint, which we call capital N, capital P, first of all, we got to find the halfway point of the x's, then the halfway point of the y's. Jeez, I got music going on. Okay. Holy. Stop. Okay. So, if I'm given two endpoints, and I call one of them x1, y1, and the other one x2, y2, well, to find the midpoint between these two, I add the x's together and divide by 2. That gives me half the midpoint. Then I add the y's on the ends, divide by 2. So that is the midpoint formula. Just find the halfway point between the x's, the halfway point between the y's. And we do that by adding them together and dividing by 2. So if I said this, find the midpoint of this line segment. So one of the ends is here at A, the other end is here at B. So to find the midpoint of AB, well, I could call this one x1, y1, this one x2, y2. How would I find the midpoint of the x's? What would I do to these? Add them and then divide by 2. So -2 plus 4 divided by 2. How would I find the midpoint of the y's? Same thing, except different numbers. -2 plus 4 divide by 2, 1. -3 plus 6, 3 divided by 2. Do we have to go to decimal? No. We can just leave it like this. I mean, if you did 1.5, it's still right. You don't need to. You can just leave it as a fraction, and you don't have to change it to a mixed number. We already talked about that last year. That's it. Pretty straightforward. But what if you were asked to work backwards? What if you were given only one endpoint, the midpoint, and asked to find the other endpoint? So we're told what the midpoint is. We're told what one of the endpoints is, but we don't know the other one. So why don't we call the other one XY? Because we don't know what it is. Remember the midpoint formula. Is x1 plus x2 divide 2, comma y1 plus y2 divide 2. Well, what do we know here? We know the midpoint is -1, 3. We know it. We know one of the endpoints is -1. but we don't know the other point, and midpoint, or sorry, endpoint. So we call it x. So -1 plus some number divide 2 is going to have to give me this. For the y's, I know one of the y's, 3. I don't know the other y on the end, so I just go 3 plus y. Divide by 2. Well, I know that has to work out to this number. So I need to figure out -1 plus what number divide 2 gives me -1. 3 plus what number divide 2 gives me 3. Well, that's why we learned algebra. So we got to make 2 equations. -1 is going to equal -1 plus x divided 2. How do I solve this? First of all, what kind of equation is it? If it's not one of these things, fraction. First thing, get rid of the fraction. How do I get rid of divide 2? Times 2. And they'll cancel each other out. But whatever I do to one side, I got to do the same thing to the other. So what do I end up with? -2 equals -1 plus x. No more fraction. How do I get x by itself? How do I get rid of that -1? Plus 1. Add 1 to both sides. And I found my missing x. And that makes sense because -1 plus -1 is -2. -2 divided by 2 is -1. Now I can do the same thing to find the missing y. So the y in the middle is 3. That's going to equal one of the ends 3 plus y divided 2. And then you just do the same thing. Get rid of the fraction, divide 2 by timesing 2. Whatever you do to one side, you do to the other. What does the equation look like after I've done that? 6 equals, therefore y is equal to 3. Because I subtract 3 from both sides. So I found my missing x on the end. I found my missing y on the end. So my missing point, just to finish it up, is this. That's my missing endpoint. Okay, so that one's a little bit more challenging because we got to work backwards and use some algebra. Okay, specifically equation solving. I think that's it, isn't it? Yeah.